lubed up and ready to go, and that'll prevent me from having a dry start. So take my impact and I'm just going to run these suckers as hard as I can. I'm just kidding. No, really though, a great way to ruin your clutch. There it is. Fell out. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is install our clutch plates on our clutch. And here I have the old KTM clutch, and I think it's very interesting. I don't know if you guys can tell the color change here, but you've got aluminum, aluminum, steel, steel, aluminum, aluminum. Now that's the metal plates, that's not the friction plates. This would be your friction plate, and this would be your metal plate, or we would call them steel plates. But the KTM for some reason has aluminum. The first two are aluminum, the second two are steel, and the last two are aluminum. So interesting combination there. I don't know why that is, but the Tusk replacement kit that I have for this actually has all steel plates. So we're going to go ahead and run that. Now these have a sharp edge and a chamfered edge. I don't think it matters which way they go. I just put the sharp edge down all the time, so I'm going to go ahead and go with that. Now as far as the friction plates go, these have been sitting in oil for hours, so these are lubed up and ready to go, and that'll prevent me from having a dry start. So to install your clutch plates, you're just going to go ahead and you're going to start with a friction, because you can't have a steel on aluminum. You're going to start with a friction. You're going to slide it on like so, and then a steel, and you're just going to alternate back and forth, friction, steel, friction, steel, friction, steel. And hopefully you guys can put it on better than I can, because I can't even get one on. Okay, and I won't bore you through this process. We'll speed this up really fast. Okay, and then we got our last friction plate. Goes on like so. Guess I got a phone call. Okay, the next thing that goes in would be our thrust washer, thrust bearing. Yeah, thrust bearing, that's the correct term. Okay, now real quick, some of you guys may have caught this and are wondering, well, what the heck, what about your push rod for your clutch? It can go in from the other side where the slave cylinder is for the hydraulic clutch. So I left it out for now. We'll put it on when we do our slave cylinder for the clutch. Our pressure plate, and our pressure plate can go on any way that it will fit, which would be basically like so. And then next will be our clutch springs. We have 5 on this motor. Now after we put our clutch springs in, we're going to put our bolts in, and they have these washers in them. Now I'm going to take my impact and I'm just going to run these suckers as hard as I can. I'm just kidding. No, really though, a great way to ruin your clutch is to go ahead and tighten these down way too tight, or start them with an impact or something like that. I would recommend never doing that. So and this clutch, okay, we're going to measure some springs actually, because this does not seem to be working out correctly, meaning I may need to get new clutch springs for this. So let's measure these. Okay, now as far as measuring clutch springs go, they have an unsprung tolerance. All clutch springs do, depending on the bike and make and model. And what you want to do is you want to measure the unsprung length of the spring. So this one, for instance, is 39 millimeters. This one is 38.5-ish. And then we're at about 38.5. Okay, about 38.5 almost. Yep, 38.5. Okay, so they're all pretty dang close, except for that one. It's a little bit longer. But I'm not gonna worry about that. But anyway, check your clutch spring. Look it up. Get on the forums. Use your owner's manual, whatever. Find your spec for your unsprung tolerance on your clutch springs. That way you know if they're too. When springs wear out, they compress and they stay compressed. They won't spring out. So anyway, just go ahead and check that. Okay, I figured out my issue here. If you guys notice, this one spring won't go in. Remember that tab that I left up? Because I was like, oh, we'll save that tab for later. it's hitting that tab. So I thought it would, I didn't even think about that. I thought it would be fine to just leave it up, but we cannot do that. So yeah, if something don't seem right, it's probably because it ain't. All right, back in with our thrust bearing, and now our pressure plate. Now that should go on just fine. That's better. Now I'm going to start all these by hand, and then I'm going to take my little impact driver on my low setting, and I'm just going to run them in evenly in a crisscross pattern, nice and slow like, and just get them to where they're almost bottomed out. But I'm going to run them in a couple threads by hand first, because the last thing I want to do is strip out my inner hub. Then I've got a very, very expensive fix on my hands, and I really don't want that. Okay, now tied on these is, to be honest, I don't even want to tell you guys because I don't want to be responsible if you have a problem, but it can't be more than 7 foot-pounds, 6-7 foot-pounds, so don't go any tighter than that. I'm just going to snug them up by hand. Done enough clutches in my life that I'm okay with my calibrated arm here. So I'm just going to snug these babies up, and that's it. And then our clutch is completely installed. There we go. Okay guys, the next thing we're going to assemble would be our clutch side case cover. This looks really complicated, but it's really not. I've read over it a couple times using the manual here, and it's really not that complicated. I got everything cleaned up and ready to go. One thing I wanted to show you guys is this little oil seal right here. This little oil seal goes right here inside of the cover. So there's a bearing in here that we ended up leaving in through the, the sandblasting, the vapor honing, or sorry, the sandblasting, the Cerakoting and everything, and it's right in there. And this little oil seal is not shown anywhere in any of the microfiche or the schematics or anything on any website that I can find. So when we actually pulled the oil seal out in order to sandblast it, but it didn't get damaged too bad, enough that I think it'll work just fine. It's just the outer lip here on the top side of the seal that looks like it got damaged, but otherwise it looks fine. So I think we're just going to go ahead and put it in and run it. So anyway, we got to put that oil seal in next, and then after that we can go ahead and start putting our pieces in. I don't think I'm going to show this on camera because I think it's going to be too hard to film, but we'll give it a shot. Okay guys, so I got my seal in, I lubed up my bearing. Now we're ready to go ahead and start putting our exhaust workings together. So the first thing you're going to do is install this piece right here. This has a bearing in it. This is your threaded adjustment for your tension on your exhaust, whatever you want to call it, your exhaust lever, I guess. So thread that in on the inside, and that's going to keep your centrifugal timer, so it's called, in place. Now I'm just going to go in till it's basically like, almost flush, so about right there, something like that. Doesn't really matter for now. Okay, now we're going to take our little lever here, and we are going to install it. And I'm just going to work it back and forth so it goes past my seal nicely without causing me any issues, just like so. That should be good. And then we're going to install the centrifugal timer. So this thing is kind of wild. Now, if you took it all apart without knowing it, there is a washer here and then two smaller washers underneath. So make sure you got them on before you put this on, or else it's not going to sit correctly. So to get this on, I'm going to tip it up. And then you want to lower your lever down. You can see that there. Lower your lever down and then push it back into that slot. And now it's sitting right at home where it's supposed to be. So it's really not hard to install, but just you kind of have to play with it just a bit. But once you get in, it's pretty easy. Okay, now once you got the timer installed, your spring setup, whatever you want to call it, we're going to flip this around, and we need to install our little bolt with our washer so that it doesn't continue to fall in and out. Now it says to use Loctite 243, which is a blue. I'm not going to put any on it right now. I'm just going to install it just to hold that piece in, and then I'll go back later and tighten it up. So I'm going to do that. It's up to you what you want to do, but that's just the way that I'm going to do it for now, just to hold that thing in place, so now when I lift the case up, nothing falls out. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is install our lever, and it is actually, it's got a square cutout in it so that it lines up with our little rocker arm there. So you can only install it one way. Well, I guess technically you could install it this way, but it would never work with the exhaust valve. So just go ahead, line it up, slide it in like so, and then we're going to take our bolt assembly, and we're going to put just a little bit of blue Loctite on it just to hold it in. This is one of those things you definitely don't want to back out. It's kind of impossible for it to back out, really, because it would butt up against this cover plate here. I got a lot on there that time, but I'm still going to go ahead and Loctite it in. So I'm going to slide it in here and just run it in. I think it's a 10mm. Well, it's got to be. It don't look like an 8. So let me grab my 10mm wrench, and we can go ahead and spin this girl in. Get it nice and snug. Now, I'm not going to go too torque crazy on it because I got our Loctite, but just snug. Okay, that's done. And then once that is finished, we're going to install our bearing, reinstall our bearing, I guess I should say, which is this one here. You want to have the bearing side, the open side of the bearing down, so that would be that direction right there. Now this bearing, it just slips right in. It doesn't sit in tight or anything like that, so that's it. And it's really nice, really smooth how it sits in there. So let me adjust my camera and I'll show you what I had to do to make this gasket work. Okay, now once you get your bearing in, the last thing to go on is just this gasket right here. And this is not the KTM gasket. I actually forgot to order the gasket itself, so I actually didn't have one, and I just made one real quick. Let me know in the comments below, do you guys want me to show you how I made this gasket to fit so perfectly? Or, you know, do you guys know how to make a gasket already? It was kind of fun to do. It's really simple how to do it, but I can show you guys. Just leave me a comment below, let me know. But that covers up your hole there for your shaft and bearing and everything like that to go through. And then I just brushed this up on the Prime MX pads, and now we want to take our bolts with our copper washers and just install it and snug it up, and that should seal all your oil out, no problem. Okay, now for now I just went ahead and put my screw in there, and then here you're gonna have this little rubber, I don't know what it is. I apologize guys, the camera died while I was putting this bolt in here, and I already inserted my little rubber plug, but that rubber plug needs to go in there because that's what keeps this from turning prematurely. So make sure you put that little rubber plug in, and then of course your bolt with your washer, so that you don't get oil leak coming out that. So, and then that will not be permanent. We will loosen that up before we go ahead and adjust our tension on our exhaust lever. And we will go ahead and put our cap on for now. Like I said, we'll go back and adjust this, but for now it is what it is. Okay, now the next thing we got to do before we can continue is rebuild our water pump. Now our water pump comes with a bearing in here and then a seal on this side. So we need to remove our seal, remove our bearing, and then install our new bearing and seal. and then this is our O-ring to install it into the case cover before we put our actual water pump cover on. So we're going to put this in the vise, we're going to heat it up a little bit, pop that bearing out, pop that seal out, and then rebuild this baby real fast. And it's super simple. There we go. That thing was stuck in there for sure. Alright, now to get that bearing out, I'm just going to heat that housing up just a little bit, and then just kind of tap the bearing out. It should fall out fairly easily once you get it, once you get the housing hot. Hope I don't melt my soft jaws here. I don't think I'm going to, but oh, I am. Ah, don't do that. I like them. I like them a lot. Let me pop this out. Ooh, how hot did I get it? Ooh, it's hot. It's hot. Okay, going against the grain here. There we go. Now all I'm doing is resting it on there. I'm not like actually clamping it tightly. Just like that. All right, let's try it again. There it is. Fell out. Now before I put my new one in, I'm actually going to just clean this up with a little bit of Scotch-Brite and make it look a little shinier. Get all that residue and garbage off of there. Okay, got my part cleaned up and looking swell. We're going to heat it back up and see if we can just drop that other, or that new bearing in. It should just drop right in. Such a small piece, spans quite a bit when it gets hot, so shouldn't be an issue. There we go, just like that. Alright guys, our part is cooled off. We got it flipped over. Now, this water pump seal, as you can see, there's kind of like, there's two sides of the seal. You can see on this side there's these 6 kind of spoke looking deals there, and then on this side there's nothing. It's just looks like an old seal. Both sides have a spring on them. I don't know as if it really matters which way it goes because of the way that the seal is made. Well, yeah, it does. It really does. But anyway, when I took the old one out, this side with the 6, we're going to call them spokes again, that goes down towards the bearing. So, like this, in this manner. And really, this thing should just push in. I'll get a socket and just kind of help ease it in, but it's a very easy bearing to put in, or seal to put in. So we'll just get one to kind of tap it in. Okay, just get it flush in the housing and that's it. Okay, now at this point we're actually ready to assemble our water pump assembly. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to take our gear with our water pump shaft and just put just a little bit of a lubrication on it just to keep it from binding up when we put it in the seal, just to help it out a little bit. And this is going to go in from this side, so I'm just going to walk it in nice and easy, like we don't want to damage our seal. Shouldn't have any issue there. Flip it back over, and then we want to use blue Loctite on this. It looks like it had red on it before. It was kind of a bugger to get off, but I'm going to use blue because you guys know how I feel about that. Take our impeller, if that's what the correct term is for it, and it actually has, it actually is supposed to slide right in there perfectly in the notches, just like so. And then obviously our nut, or our bolt and washer, and that completes our build on our water pump. So just a little bit of Loctite on it, and we're going to run that baby in there. Now the way you tighten this bolt up is you've got to hold the gear and keep it from spinning in order to tighten the bolt up. Nothing crazy, but once I get to that point I will clamp it in my soft jaws. That way I can avoid damaging my gear. I may not need to actually. It'll work out just fine. I'll clamp it just a little bit. Just a little bit. And I'm not torquing this tight at all. I'm just snugging it up. Okay, like that. Actually popped out of my vise right when I got it where I wanted it. So there we go. Our water pump assembly is done. Now we can slide it into our case, put our water pump cover on, and then at that point we're ready to put our clutch side case cover on, and things are going to look really, really sweet from here on. Okay guys, we're to the point now where we can install our water pump into our clutch side case cover. Very simple to do. You're going to pull your gear off the back like so, and then drop your water pump in, and it fits pretty snug in there. And then we can slide our gear back on from the back side and slide it all the way. Put our O-ring on. That's what seals our pump itself. And then we're getting really close here. If you guys remember in my Cerakoting video, I actually taped all this off, forgetting that it wasn't a gasket and it was just an O-ring seal. So a lot of water pumps have gaskets, but don't forget your little dowel pins to align your water pump housing. And now we can go ahead, set this baby on there, put our brand new bolts in, and we can torque this baby down. I am pumped to see some color. This thing is looking great. Very, very excited with the outcome of these two colors and just the blending of the two, how well it's looking. I'm very, very happy with it. Now at this point, after we've got these on here and torqued down, we can go ahead and put our clutch side case cover on, and we will adjust the exhaust valve and all that other stuff just here a little bit later. But for now, that's everything. And just like that, we've got our water pump installed. Okay, now this is one of the benefits to having an engine stand that makes it so nice, is I can tilt this and kind of keep everything going this direction instead of fighting everything in a vertical fashion. So super handy to have. I'll put a link below for this engine stand where you guys can pick it up. I love this thing. It's a motorsport product. I didn't get it from them. I'm not sponsored or anything like that, but I would definitely recommend this engine stand. So we don't want to forget this O-ring right here. This O-ring is important because this is what seals our coolant from the other side of our water pump. And make sure you lube up your O-ring before you install that. Give it a little bit of a chance to seal there. And then before I go ahead and put my gasket on, I made sure that both my dowel pins were in. There's one here and one there, and that will help line up our gasket. Now, like I did before on the other side, I'm going to take just a little bit of grease on a brush. I'm going to go around, grease everything, make sure I've got a good coat of grease on it, just a super thin layer, and that will make me feel a lot better about installing that gasket. I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit of lubrication to my primary gear, being that I didn't have any on this before, and right here on my clutch basket. And that pretty much covers everything under this side of the cover. So this thing is almost done. I cannot wait to see it completely done. Okay, again, this is just the Maxima waterproof grease. I love this stuff. I use it on everything. I'll put a link down below in the description also for this. Okay, we're all greased up. Slide this on here and get it all lined up. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, we want to slide our lever in and then bring our cover down, and we just kind of have to line up all of these gears. Oh, one thing I forgot. I forgot our kickstart seal. So I'm going to put that in really fast. Same way I've installed seals on everything else, I'm just going to go ahead and get a socket, drive it in, and then we can slide it over this shaft and not have to worry about damaging the seal or putting it on like this. Okay, I promise this time we're going to go on with it, because I'm dying here. Getting all these gears to mesh and align perfectly. Okay, looks like everything's lining up good. We're gonna put our bolts in. Alright guys, we got our cover on. Everything looks to be fine. We're going to torque it to 84 inch-pound, which is the equivalent of 7.2 foot-pounds. And just kind of go from the inside out. That's a rule that I kind of live by when I torque things with gaskets. It's just inside out, and you can't go wrong. It allows the gasket to move a little bit and not squish towards the middle. That's kind of why the inside out rule is what it is. So I'm noticing this Cerakote layer that I have on here is really thin. It's actually flaked off in a couple places. So nothing about the Cerakote is bad. It's just that I probably didn't get the layer quite thick enough. But on the water pump I did. On the I don't think I got quite thick enough layer on the inner clutch cover. So anyway, not a big deal, but just something I noticed. So Cerakote is thin anyway, but if you apply it really thin, it's going to be kind of flaky, I noticed. And this is just where the bolts are actually tightening up against the case. Nowhere else is it coming off. So anyway, I always torque my engine bolts, always torque my case bolts. I don't screw around with that stuff because I don't know how many times I've opened up a motor or worked on a clutch or whatever and somebody just straight up wrenched on the bolts. So okay, those are all on. Let's put our clutch cover on. Okay guys, the very last thing that we're going to do now is tighten our bolt on our centrifugal timer. This one that we hadn't touched yet. And we're going to put just a little bit of blue Loctite on it before we do that. And there's kind of a trick to doing this because it wants to spin over with the motor. So I'll show you what I'm going to do. I don't know if it's the right way or the wrong way, but it works. So I got a little bit of blue Loctite on it. I'm going to put this in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my big channel locks that I have, and I'm going to put the bike in gear, and I'm going to hold the countershaft sprocket with my channel locks, and then I can torque this down. Okay, now torque on it is about 8 foot-pounds, or sorry, 8 Newton meters. So I've got that set up on my wrench. Now I'm just going to close it up. Okay, and that's it, just like so. We'll put our washer on and our cap, and we have finished the bottom end. guys, I don't know what you think, but I freaking love this motor. This thing has turned out amazing. I'm so happy with how it looks right now. I can't even explain it. I was kind of worried about like the darker brown anodized case with the Glacier titanium, but I think it looks awesome. It's gonna look killer once it's all done and assembled. So we've got our bolt hardware kit that looks great. That's another thing too, is I'm gonna contact Bolt and tell them that when they do their engine fastener kits, they need to include these 3 bolts here for the or 4 bolts, sorry, for the power valve assembly, because they just look out of place. They look totally out of place right here. You've got these nice brand new you know, shiny bolts, and then you have those rough looking ones. So I'm gonna reach out to them and just say, hey, you should include that in your kit. And you know, maybe they'll do it, maybe not, it's up to them, but I think it would dress the engine up a lot more. So that does it for our bottom end build. Remember, we did not torque this bolt down, and we did not set our distance here on our spring, so on our lever. So we've still got to do that, but we can't do that until we actually have the cylinder head on. So that will be on the top end build video. And then on the other side, we actually didn't hit the slave cylinder, but that will be its own deal. I'll probably put it into the top end video too. So guys, thanks for following along on this build so far. This motor has turned out awesome. Everything rotates smoothly. I'm super happy with how it turned out. Like I said, I'll put a link down below on the tools. Give me a comment. Let me know. Do you guys love these colors? What would you have done differently? Is there any suggestions or advice that I could have used to build this motor? Let me know. I'm learning about this Cerakote process and how it's turning out. And overall, I'm in love with it. It's working out great. I could not be happier for my first Cerakote job, my first KTM motor job. Everything is just turning out so good. So crossing my fingers. Hopefully I don't grenade it the first 10 hours I'm riding it. But anyway, that pretty much wraps it up. Okay guys, a lot of hard work, but it's coming along really well. We've got our powder coating pieces back. Once we get the top end on, we're pretty much going to go together with the bike. So stay tuned, it's coming together really fast now, and we're going to start picking up the video content hopefully. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't. Give me a like. We'll see you in the next one.